We are talking to Erika Brown of the Manchester Cricket, as we do every week. Erika, it seems as if housing is the most compelling conversation in Manchester by the Sea. Tell us about the workshop last week. Apparently, it was hot and sultry.
Hot and sultry. What a great phrase. I love that. Yeah, I tell you, it was hot because the temperature, and we were in a LEED certified school, high school cafeteria, and as a result, there was no air conditioning.
I see. Yeah, but good for them.
A lot of fanning.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yes, that's exactly right. This was the first public workshop of the Manchester Affordable Housing Trust and the Manchester Housing Authority. It was a joint workshop. We've talked about this because they have been rolling this plan out for a while, that they have worked to put together with a consultant, Beverly Gallo of Peregrine Associates. It's a specialist consulting firm that deals with public-private real estate development projects like this, especially with affordable housing. And this addresses 4 properties that are owned by the town or owned by their public housing already. And then there's 3 properties: Newport Park, the Plains, and Loading Place Road. And then the 4th one is the DPW site, which is used obviously for the DPW, where they want to actually move the DPW. It's on Pleasant Street. They want to move that up to Upper School Street and use this 5-acre piece of property in the village to put units on that. They all work together. And that's kind of what's key. There were some key takeaways. First of all, I will tell you, in attendance, this was the first public workshop that was kind of billed as a neighborhood outreach thing. So in other words, if you lived on Pleasant Street or Old Essex Road or Pine Street or School Street, you're in the neighborhood and you can come and learn about the plans and you can have questions and understand how it impacts you, right? Mm-hmm. By my count, there were 95% of the people in the audience were either town board members or members of the citizens group that is, fighting the 40B and for affordable housing. So, it was interesting. There was no neighborhood engagement quite yet. Yeah. That's going to change though, because this is John Feuerbach, the chairman of the Manchester Affordable Housing Trust. He introduced it and he basically said, this is going to be a long road. This is going to take a while to kind of ingest. We've gone over this before, but in total, we're talking about 174 units. Mm-hmm. So, you're talking about renovating the existing units, which are woefully dilapidated. And I think we've talked about that before, particularly with the Plains and Newport Park. And then they're going to add units because the state had set up these incentives so that it has to be sort of what's called a 1-for-1 match. For every 1 unit that you create, you have to create another one. So in other words, you renovate one, you create another. That's the state. But then also,
and partially that's to make it attractive to developers. Is that right?
Yep, that's exactly
right. But how does the state help out? I wasn't quite clear on that.
The state, and that's an interesting backstory because this is something that is actually statewide. It's a statewide issue. Apparently, Gretchen Wood, who is the chairman of the Manchester Housing Authority, she's also the former town clerk in Manchester, so everyone really knows her and trusts her. She got up and said, listen, Newport Park and the Plains were not alone. They were part of this massive wave of development in the 60s and 70s for affordable subsidized housing. Newport Park is for the elderly, and then the Plains is mostly for the elderly, but it's not managed that way. It's not supposed to be. It just happens to be that way. And she said the state ran out of money, and they don't provide money for maintenance. They don't really, in all reality. So that's why it's funny. I remember hearing somebody last fall say at a meeting about sort of affordable housing, and they said, oh, the town's done a great job with Newport Park. We have these incredible facilities like Newport Park. Clearly, he's never been to Newport Park.
Right.
Because it's a townhouse setup. They built townhouses in the 60s. And imagine if you're in a wheelchair, you can't even get up the stairs. And it's not ADA compliant. It's very, very difficult. So I'm going to now answer your question, which is, the state didn't make an accommodation for the maintenance. And now they have all these properties across the state, which are aging and in need of an overhaul, really. Mm. So what they have done is they have set up these incentives. And I think the state does that. They set up incentives where they say, okay, here's a way to make it attractive to lure in a developer.
Mm.
So if you increase density, for instance, if you increase density, maximize the number of units, then a developer will be able to make money on the project and able to do the right thing and make money at the same time. And doing the right thing means rehabbing all those facilities and adding to the affordable housing stock. So what they get in return is they get additional units that are at market rate. They're not subsidized. They're not affordable. They're market rate,
Right.
which is not a bad thing, because if you have, I mean, I hate to use the word ghettoization, but one of the problems of affordable housing in the history is that you have these places where it's only where affordable housing people are, subsidized people, and it's away from, another street where it might be a little tonier. So these things are mixed.
That's
So
great.
so yeah, so the controversy that I think will probably happen is on Pleasant Street, which is a kind of a densely kind of old, neighborhood of smaller homes, and then Old Essex Road is the same thing. The Plains is on Old Essex Road, and the DPW site is on Pleasant Street. So between the two of them, they're going to see an increase of 50 units.
Mm. Mm.
That's going to be, I imagine people are going to be concerned about public safety, traffic. They're going to bring up the dreaded, 2-bedroom apartments, that's going to bring in kids. Those nasty kids, they're so expensive for the
We'll start
school
using our
system.
schools, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and the truth is, and we point this out in the article, finally, because people do talk about that. They say we have a capacity problem with the school system and with schools, and that's actually just not factually true. There are 600 fewer kids in the school system than there were 10 years ago. And that shows that Manchester and Essex, but Manchester in particular, is aging, and that problem is only getting more wider. It's getting bigger. It's not getting smaller. We're not going to close that gap of capacity. That 600 might even become 800. Who knows in the next several years.
I
So
was really
looking
glad.
for 2 and 3 bedroom apartments is probably a good thing.
Right. I was really glad to see that detail in the story because that is such a common argument. Right.
It's an inconvenient truth. I mean, really, it's an inconvenient truth. People say, there's capacity. We have a capacity problem in the school system. We can't possibly increase units in the town. And certainly not, 2 and 3 bedroom, those kids. And then you look and you say, it's not really quite true.
Right. Well, then there's the issue of the DPW site because that might be a glitch in the whole plan, right?
It's a big glitch.
Yeah.
And one I think they're probably managing against. We got a scent of it about a month ago when John Feuerbach was presenting this plan first to the BOS to basically get their blessing to say, we need you to bless this because we need to package this up as an RFP for developers and try to get developers to come. And the BOS, they kind of stopped short of blessing the DPW site part of it. And that comes for 2 reasons. Number one, DPW is supposed to move up, as I said, to Upper School Street. Well, Upper School Street is where Black Earth Composting has been having its big composting operation, which is, their operation, they service up to southern New Hampshire with this operation. So we host them on town property. They pay for it, but they're subsidized because they give us in the town of Manchester free curbside, essentially free curbside composting services. And we get to go up to Black Earth anytime we want and take as much compost as we like for free.
That's wonderful. That's a gift.
It is wonderful.
Yeah.
So their plan was to move down to the transfer station. Why? Because that operation is a little bit of a problem in Upper School Street because it smells. It smells. It's been a huge problem for Utopia Farms, the Manchester Athletic Club. It's been a big complaint up there. So the town knew they needed to move. So they said, okay, we're going to go for this big state grant. We're going to move you to the transfer station off of Pine Street. So that's a perfect place for composting. And then we'll move the DPW up to the compost site, the current compost site. Well, Black Earth didn't get that grant, and that's been delayed. So that's number one. That doesn't look like it's going to happen until early next year, 2022. So that's a big glitch, especially for people who've wanted this RFP for the affordable housing thing to go out this summer.
Right.
Right.
So there are 30 units that are supposed to be built at the DPW site?
30 units, all market rate, all of them, 100%. Not one of them will be affordable housing.
Mm.
And the reason why is they need that money and that revenue to A, subsidize the cost of renovating all the units across the board. And number two, to essentially have an engine for wealth over time so that they can keep them up over time. And then number three, the developer can actually make money. So all three of those things are very much in play. You know what it reminds me of, Heather? It reminds me of a game of Jenga at the end, when literally you've got these sticks and you remove one of them and it all goes. And literally, that's what they're saying. John Feuerbach is saying we need all the properties for it to work. And if it doesn't, and somebody said, well, what if can't we, what about the Pleasant Street side? What if the neighborhood doesn't want it? And the consultant was great. She said, listen, there's no problem there. It's just about community need and what the community is willing to do. Get another property where there's 30 units and you'll be fine. Problem is, there's very few properties.
Right. Well, thank you so much. And I know we will have much more to talk about next week.
I love being just you and I. It was nice. I love Corey. We love Corey.
We love Corey. We love Corey. And we'll see him next week. I know.
Exactly.
All right.